How good is this? First episode of AFLW today for the new season. And you know what? We're going to start it off with a great way with one of my true loves, and that is the Sydney Swans. There's no better way to start it off. And today we are joined by Alexia, don't call her Alex, or Alexia Hamilton. How are you, Lexi?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, we'll start with some serious stuff because the podcast before the show, as we've already done, has probably been the best recording someone's ever going to get, but no one will ever hear it. But let's go with the nice, easy, professional. How's the super long preseason treating you?
I know it's like we obviously played in a practice match on the weekend, so it's been nice to verse someone other than each other for once, because we've obviously been going. We played in a series of matches earlier in the year. So obviously to prime for those games, we had to put in a block of work prior to those being played. So we've been, I guess, in training now since probably February, and it's now July. So it's been the longest preseason I've ever participated in. And yeah, it's been going well. We are very keen to like get stuck into playing real matches against AFLW teams. You sort of get very sick of versing each other and bashing each other up out there. So it's very close now, but yeah, it feels like we're right near the end. So only a couple more weeks and then we'll be there.
Yeah, of course. We're recording this in the last week of July, so we're just shy of 2 weeks away from the season beginning. But you did mention that there was that block of games that you played. I think it was against like intra teams from Brisbane and Adelaide as well. How is that mentally? Like, you're getting up for those games knowing that they are important for your preseason, but then it's the come down because your season's still 6 to 8 weeks away. Like, that has to be tough coming from, I suppose, a lot of junior footy where you're playing week in, week out, and then all of a sudden everything's thrown into a 3-month block.
Yeah, it was pretty hard. Like obviously we were doing match sim and stuff at training as well. So you're preparing for these games, and then in those games we were still winning some of them quite significantly, because obviously in those games you're either playing girls back from injury or you're playing new draftees, whereas we took the approach of we want to try some new things. And then you finish those games and then your whole sort of, I guess, season is put on hold for another 12 weeks. So it really just kind of we just like analyze those games so much, because you just know you're not playing another game for 10 weeks. So in comparison to sort of when you're in season or anything in your junior footy, you just all of a sudden you're like, yeah, we're on a roll here. We're playing 4 games in a row, and then you just stop for another 10 weeks. So it's been pretty hard. And I think that's why we're itching so hard to play again in a few weeks' time, which is super exciting.
So we'll talk about that. Obviously, it's round 1 versus the Tigers at North Sydney Oval. And we'll talk about that. North Sydney Oval, I love it as the fact that it's just out of nowhere, well, I suppose in a couple of seasons, become the Swans' spiritual home. And every year the game's going to kick off either on a Saturday twilight, which they definitely need to bring back, or a Friday night at North Sydney Oval. Like, it's such an enclosed ground, having lived in Sydney myself. It seems like a great way to start a season because it's always packed, and just the location of North Sydney Oval is easily accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I think both of I suppose, like we've only played one game in the SCG. So both North Sydney and Henson Park are such enormous venues for us. And especially in AFLW, obviously the crowd attendance isn't as large as the men's space, but ultimately it feels just as big when you're at those grounds, because the atmosphere is just phenomenal there. Like the ability to attract just the loudest people in Sydney has got to be like one of the talents in itself. But yeah, it's pretty much been a staple for us for a few years now. And it's always like, no matter sort of rivalries within the league or big games coming up, round 1, and obviously North Sydney Oval has always, like for the last couple of years, been something we've been really looking forward to. It's a bit of a harder ground to play on just because it's like significantly smaller than any ground we've played on elsewhere. And the atmosphere there just makes it feel you just feel like the tiniest person out there. But it's always such an exciting game, and the fireworks and I guess the entertainment that goes on with the theatrics of round 1 is super exciting.
And talk to me about Henson Park, because the Swans are one of the teams in the AFLW that have, obviously, that is your home ground, Henson Park, but with some of the teams here in Victoria, they're sort of playing here, there and everywhere. I know Geelong likes to play all the games at GMHBA and Whitten Oval for the Dogs, but the Swans' home is Henson Park, and you've got that atmosphere that teams don't have, and regularly the largest attended games throughout the season are Swans games. What's it like on a Sunday arvo, Saturday arvo, running out at Henson? I'm yet to have gone to a game at Henson, but I've played some junior footy at Henson. Like, it is a great space to play football.
Yeah, I think that's something like the club has been super proud of, is like our ability to actually bring people to games, and especially at Henson in AFLW space. And like you don't even have to be in a professional league to know what the atmosphere at Henson can be like. Like you just go and watch local footy, or even just like I think they play cricket there as well. There's like a heap of sport that goes on there, and because of the like geometrics of the field, it's like a fishbowl essentially. So no matter where you're sort of positioned in the field, the hill, it's just like the most like everyone's just looking down on into the field. So it almost feels like you're in a stadium essentially. I think one of my favorite games at Henson's, we played a Pride round maybe last year or the year before, and it was just like huge. It was huge. Like the crowd was insane. It was like the perfect day, rugs on the hill. But to really have somewhere you call like an actual home ground, I think is super special to the club, because anyone coming to Henson, whether they're a top performing team or someone that's growing, like they feel that no matter what. So we just like try and turn up, and the crowd turns up every time and gets behind us, and momentum's huge. So yeah, we take Henson every day of the week.
I have booked my tickets to come to Henson for the Pride match against Carlton later this year. I will be having a doozy on the hill. I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, but no, it'd be unreal.
With Henson, you've obviously said you've played one game at the SCG, and we'll move on from this just after this, but do you eventually want to play games at the SCG as well as having maybe a game or two at Henson, just to not lose that connection you do have with Henson Park? Because I assume playing in front of 50,000 at the SCG is the end game here.
Yeah, and I think it's like ultimately, obviously, everyone like that's a dream to play in front of that many people at a stadium, at an oval that is so sacred to obviously the Swans and like the South Melbourne football club and all the rich history of a transition up into Sydney. But then ultimately, like grassroots, Henson was sort of there for us when we weren't able to perform in front of the SCG. So ultimately, like I guess the end goal would to be able to sell out an SCG and play at the SCG and have that atmosphere brought to that ground, but also recognizing that Henson has just done so much for us in games that we probably shouldn't have won. We've won there. So yeah, ideally like playing in front of the SCG. We've played once, and I don't think the atmosphere just wasn't quite the same, like because it's obviously a massive ground. I think even we might have even still had like 7,000 people there, but you put 7,000 people in Henson and all of a sudden it's crazy. You put 7,000 people in SAG and it's just empty. So ultimately, yeah, that'd be the end goal. But Henson's really good for now.
I like it. Let's quickly sort of talk about last year, because after making the finals in 23, last year, in all honesty, was a bit disappointing, but everyone was injured. There is no understating that. How is it? You talked about the super long preseason, but does it fill you and the rest of the squad with confidence that players like Chloe, Ali, Laura Gardner are all running around without strapping on? They're cleared, ready to go into round one. Like, obviously, you had the disappointment of last year, but coming into 25, everyone must be so pumped that the squad looks as strong as it does.
Yeah, I think coming off 2023 and like most of the players, if you ask them what's their most memorable game in like their Swans career or whatnot, most of us would probably say our first final win. So just coming off that year, we were on such a high and we sort of thought we were invincible. And then obviously Chloe goes down, Morph goes down. You've got people running around strapping their broken fingers up. So we just had we were just torn apart. And I mean, similar to the boys this year, we can sort of sit back and be like, oh, it's the injuries and et cetera, et cetera. And there's nothing like you can't speed up or give someone anything that'll just automatically put them back on the pitch. But I think coming into this year, there was a lot of girls last year who really stepped up for us. Brenna Tarrant being one, Alice Mitchell, and other midfielders were able to step up as well with, some of our key mids being out. So coming into this season, those girls have stepped up. We've also got our more talented players coming back, and it's just it's so challenging for our own group because we've just got such an elite team now. Like you've got people who have stood up, and then you've got people coming back, and we've got barely any injuries. So it's like we're really, really happy where we are at the moment. And it's been such a long time coming. Like the extended preseason has allowed us as well to I suppose move girls through rehab quicker and do heaps more prep in terms of ACL prevention and soft tissue prevention. So from a point of view, we've been going on forever, but also there's no surprise that we don't really have anyone on a long-term injury list at the moment, which is great.
And you did talk about that, squad list, squad depth. So had the first official practice match against the Giants last week. Talk to me about Zippy Fish. I feel like she's going to become a cult hero very quickly just on pure name alone, but she looks to be chock full of talent, but also has one of the best footballing names ever.
I know. I think when we first drafted her, I saw like Dan Does Footy, he did something, he's like Zippy Fish has got to be like the coolest name in football. But no, she's been really exciting to come to the club. And she's just such a young, like raw talent. And coming from Perth as well, like in the Melbourne, if you pick someone up from Melbourne, they sort of already are introduced to pathways and they've got their foot in every door. But Zippy's really raw, so it's been super exciting to like help her through this pathway. But she's just such a talented footballer in terms of her skills. Like she's one of those, like she can kick left foot, right foot clean like darts, and her ability to like read the ball has been super powerful for us. She's starting actually in a defensive role, but I wouldn't be surprised if that moves throughout the year. And she kicked our first goal for us on the weekend on the back of a 50, but she's just such a versatile player. So she's someone that could very much move through the ranks. She'd be able to like essentially play anywhere, I feel like, at the moment, which is so powerful for us in versatility.
Is that something that you've noticed with like this year's draft crop and even last year's as well, now that the players who have been able to play footy all the way through their life, which is one of the great things that the AFLW has allowed, is the participation for young girls around Australia from when they're 6 all the way through to drafting. Have you noticed the players who haven't had that gap seemingly have just that sort of, I guess it's that extra step and understanding of football, whereas players who might have had a couple of years off here and there take maybe a season or two to really get back into the groove?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of our biggest like examples of that is Amelia Martin, who's a Sydney Swans Academy product. And so just being able to have her in the system from such a young age, like I think she was a part of like the inaugural Swans Academy, like the Sydney Swans W Academy, which is just like an enormous stat. But she's come in and already like sort of lifting more than girls who have been in the program for a long time. So like to have girls that are already built to play is super helpful when you're drafting someone, because you don't want to draft someone and not be able to play them until round 6, round 7, because they're not quite up to like physicality, but they're ready to go essentially. And then their football brains, their skills, because they've been playing for so long, there's no gap. Like you don't have to introduce them to the program because they're very familiar with the program and they've probably been doing a similar program from under 18s anyways. But yeah, just their ability to like come in and impact straight away, just I think is a testament to the pathway that's been set up by the AFL and those clubs that are aligning with under 18s, which is just huge for any club really. It just means that there's more talent and there's actually a future for younger girls and they continue to play the whole way through.
It's almost as if academies are a good thing. Hello to clubs in Melbourne who don't like them.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, they're very good for us.
Yeah. But let's talk about your story a little bit, because yours is, I found it extremely interesting when doing some prep for this. So you grew up in Queanbeyan, and unlike Alice Mitchell, who spent a cup of coffee in Gunnedah, you are from the country. Like, we can claim that. You're from Queanbeyan. But what was the footy scene like in Queanbeyan around Canberra? I know AFL Canberra for years with the Queanbeyan Tigers, Belconnen, has been very strong in the male competition with the old NEAFL. What was it like growing up as a young woman trying to find your way in footy?
Yeah, so I'm one of 6 kids. So we grew up, like, I guess, like, sort of similar, like, close to Queanbeyan. We grew up in Murrum Bateman, which is sort of, we were out in property, and then we played for Queanbeyan growing up. But we sort of did a lot of other sports because there was no pathway, essentially, which is why I'm such a big advocate for the academies, because you can really just see yourself the whole way through the pathway. But we were sort of dabbling around in basketball and judo, martial arts, and a few other things that were sort of around the area at the time. My brother was playing AFL for obviously just community league, and I wanted to play, but there was no league at the time. And essentially I just waited a couple of years for it to come around. And I first actually started playing for Belconnen, and that was sort of closest to home, and just loved footy. And it wasn't long after that I moved over to Queanbeyan to play there when I started really taking my football serious. And Queanbeyan just really, like, they've got people playing in all sorts of AFLW teams and AFL teams now that they've been able to produce. And even if you just look under that in they obviously they had the NEAFL competition and they had a team in that, and then they've got a lot of players playing throughout the VFL and SANFL. But yeah, they really just, I think, advocated for me to just be. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, we've got to get you drafted. We just wanted to be the best footballer that I could be, essentially. And even obviously I spent some time at Gold Coast and come back home after not being offered a new contract. And as soon as I come home, it wasn't, oh, poor Lexi, like, this is the reality. It was like, let's get back to work. Like, this is what we've got to work on. So they've been massive in my actual football development. And anytime I actually go back to Canberra, I was back there on the weekend. I went back and watched the Queanbeyan team play. So, yeah, a lot of love for that club for sure.
So you did mention Gold Coast, and that's another thing I want to talk about. So you spent some time with Gold Coast Suns and the North Melbourne Kangaroos as well. And now you found your way from the Swans. Was that just through not getting offered other contracts, and then eventually when the Swans expansion squad came in, you saw an opportunity, or the Swans also contacted you? Like, take us through that, because I don't think many people would understand, especially in AFLW, just how, I suppose, how cutthroat some of these contract calls are given the smaller squad lists.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think, and that's like the most important, well, not like important, but like unrecognized thing is that like everyone's journey to this space is so different. Like the draft is so different for everyone. Being on a list is so different for everyone. And obviously trade, like you've got that many girls who aren't even from Sydney that are actually on the Swans list now. So like, how do they get here? But yeah, so initially drafted to Gold Coast, ecstatic, moved up there. I was just 18. And at the time, it was obviously the financial gain from playing football was not as significant as it is now. So I was studying full-time at uni, working pretty much part-time hours and doing my football on top of that. Because, yeah, it was pretty much I was like, no friends, no life. I was just...
And you're living on the Gold Coast with no life.
Yeah. I know. I'm literally in paradise, and I'm just like napping during the day. Yeah, but I found that first year really, really tough. And I mean, it doesn't really help that that was Gold Coast's, like it was the Suns' inaugural year as well. Yeah. So they were learning so much. And the boys hadn't been around for long. So they just didn't, it was just so fresh for everyone. Whereas here, they had the academy set up. They've already seen all the clubs go through the process, and they've learned so much from that. What do we want to do, what we want to stand for, what we don't want to do. And I think just seeing the two inaugural programs in comparison was so different. But ultimately, yeah, like at Gold Coast, I made some really good friends there, but I wasn't in my best football phase, I wouldn't say. COVID came long after, moved back home, had a stint with Queanbeyan, and then moved to North, started in their VFL team, then got picked up as an injury replacement mid-season. And I loved my time at North Melbourne. Like they were just such an amazing club, such an obviously successful club as well with their recent premiership. And they were just such a phenomenal, like cultured team. And yeah, I saw the expansion opportunity coming with Sydney Swans coming in. Cynthia was entering her draft year. And Canberra to Melbourne to Sydney. It was kind of an easy decision to make, and to where I saw the rest of sort of, I guess, like in a longer term vision of where I wanted to play my football. I've been a blood supporter forever anyway. So I was like, as soon as they come in, I was like, ultimately I wanted to play for Swans. And then, yeah, I guess like the rest is history. Sort of at the time, I can't remember if we reached out or they reached out. Scott Gowans had been involved at North previously.
Yeah.
I didn't really have much to do with him, but I sort of said to my manager at the time, like, I wouldn't mind going to Swans, and there was some interest there. And then, yeah, like, obviously that season, the ability to sign had to have been so quickly because they were like essentially given no time to create a list. So it wasn't, I think I was on my football trip with the girls when I was like, yeah, I'm going to Sydney. And they were all like, are you serious? Like we just finished the season. But yeah, no, this is like the place that I now call home. And yeah, very grateful for Sydney and for the Swans for embracing everything that comes with the football.
So you did mention your sister there, Cynthia, who obviously got drafted and is a part of the squad this year as well. And it's something that I and maybe a few others would have noticed last year. And there's starting to be a little bit more tension between teams in games, a little bit of fisticuffs here and there. Why is it that you, your sister, or even just Tanya Kennedy, probably because she's Irish, seem to find yourself in the thick of these fights?
Oh my goodness, I know.
I love it personally. I love the rivalry and the anger and the passion that players are showing.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm gonna like blame it anyways on like I always come from quite a big family, so I'm like quite a protective person of
Yep.
those like close to me. So I reckon if someone like went at me, I probably wouldn't even like give too much like care for it. But it's when like people or like say if someone dog shots or like just someone hits someone late, I'm like,
Yep.
oh my god, how dare you do that to like one of my friends. And I don't mind like the physicality of the game. Like Cynthia and I both grew up doing judo, so we've had our fair share of like being thrown around. So yeah, I don't mind it. There's a few other girls who don't mind it either. Like Tanya loves it. Sophia Hurley sometimes gets into it, and like I think sometimes it even like boosts our morale. I think it was a game against Essendon. I think a few of us got fined, but we were
At Whitney Oval, I was there.
yeah, we were getting beaten, I think, by
Yes.
a little bit. And at halftime, we sort of like said, actually, we're not taking any more of this. Like, where we're getting beaten in the contest, we're getting beaten in physicality. We're getting pushed under the ball, and we just like turn around and said, like, actually, like we're gonna do the first hit here. And I think we ended up maybe only losing by a couple of points or something. But yeah, I think sometimes it can really boost the energy of the group. I don't know if it's in a positive way, but yeah, there seems to be a few of us that run around with a few closed fists ready to go.
So I do remember that night. That was Friday night, unfortunately, before the men got spanked in a grand final. But I just remember that night there was about 150 of us on the hill, all there for the weekend, obviously, but watching the game. And I just remember one Polly Porridge, a part of True Bloods, is like, oh, Cynthia's in a brawl. And then all of a sudden there was you, just straight in there after it. And it just lifted the 150 people. And then it spurred the Swans on. Obviously, you lost the game there, but the energy for the last 15 minutes was palpable. But have you noticed that between, obviously, you don't play everyone because of 12 rounds, and we can ask about that as well. Have you noticed that there's a bit more spice between a few teams as well, as I suppose expansion has gone on and rivalries have been built?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's hard to go past Giants. Like, you see it in the weekend, you see it in like the VFL, you see it in ours. Like, obviously, just being from the same state, everyone ultimately wants to be superior to the other one. And yeah, so I think Giants will always hold like a special place in our heart for rivalry. We seem to always. I'm trying to think.
Seems to be something with Geelong, I've noticed.
Yeah, Geelong are always like quite hot on it as well. I think I don't know how it happens, because like I don't really, now that I'm recalling, like we don't actually have anything to biff about. It's not like with Giants, we're like, oh, we want to like be better than them in terms of state, but like Geelong, it's like, why?
Fair.
Maybe because of like the boys' history and like the grand final, like we're like, let's just get them in the girls or whatever. But I feel like Essendon, now that like we've had an initial like squirrel with them, it always just has
just
one.
Like the men.
Yep, it always has one, and then you're like, okay, this is going to happen for the next 100 years. Or Bulldogs, I feel like we got in a bit of a tuffle with Bulldogs as well. But yeah, not really. We're not too. I'm like trying to think of anyone. That's the like main ones.
Yeah.
I suppose this year we'll really see, now that we have like sort of everyone back and like a whole different team look. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who we come up against, and hopefully nothing too crazy. But yeah, nothing wrong with it. There's like a little bit of banterful pushing around.
I look forward to that. I think there's actually probably no better way to finish off than that, other than who do you think of this Swan squad coming into 2025 is going to break out and have a season that I suppose fans haven't been able to predict?
I think you could see, like, haven't been able to predict is like, I feel like the key part. Like, you expect like Tippy to play well, and you expect our new like the trades to play well. But Amelia Martin, that I mentioned before from the Sydney Swans Academy, she's a sort of hybrid forward, but can play sort of a bit taller than her size. Her hands are just elite. I don't really think I've seen her drop many balls lately. And her communication for such a young age has just been so phenomenal. So she's someone I think that's really going to like surprise people. Like, I think she's been overlooked heaps throughout this entire preseason and our pre-match games as well that we played not long ago. But I just think that she's just going to come out and just start crashing packs, and people are going to like love her physicality as well. Yeah.
I can't wait. Obviously, the season kicks off in a couple of weeks' time. The Swans take on Tigers. Round 1 at North Sydney Oval. Can't watch it. You can watch every game on KO, and there's also a bunch of bars you can all watch the footy at this season. I won't call you Alex or Alexia or Alexa, but Lexi Hamilton, thank you for joining us today on AFLW Today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.